What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am here once again to talk about the new Smashing Pumpkins album, ATUM, Volume 2. I already talked about Volume 1 in my critically acclaimed video that was beloved by millions, and not one dissenting comment in the comment section. No, just kidding. The Smashing Pumpkins fan base will always have that subset of fans who just think that everything that Billy Corgan has done is fantastic, and they'll say, Josh, I love Seer, and I love Shiny and Oh So Bright, and I love Autumn. These albums are fantastic, and I'm just like, what kind of level of delusion do you have to be when you've heard their old material, you've heard how classic and fantastic their old songs are, and then you're going to sit there and say, oh no, these new songs are just as good. Yeah, there's always going to be those people who say that, but for the most part, everyone has realized that Billy Corgan's songwriting skills have diminished, as well as maybe even his voice, or it could be the mix of his voice, that I'm not sure of. So anyway, let's break down this album. Oh, by the way, you're watching Dancing with Ghosts. The first song is called Avalanche. It starts out with a kid saying, we'll find out what happiness means, like over and over again. The opening of the first volume was a gong, and now we have a child saying we'll find out what happiness means over and over again. Such weird and bad opening choices for albums, but whatever. All of the fluttery and whimsical 1970s sounding synthesizers are still here, folks. Do not worry, they have not gone anywhere. And then the actual song kicks in about the 2-minute mark, and it's the same generic synth rock that was found on ATUM Volume 1. Next, we get to the song Empires, which starts off with a modern rock riff that it's kind of been overdone at this point, quite frankly. It's just a bunch of pull-offs on a guitar. Here, hold on, let me show you. It's one of these kind of riffs. Which, I mean, at least it's a rock-sounding riff, so I'll take it. It also sounds like Billy is really trying hard to stretch his range and hit notes that aren't quite in his range, or I know I've said this before, but his voice is just aged, and it just sounds more grating to my ears. But I don't know. I would say overall this song was decent. Next, we get to the song Neophyte. It is a lackluster synth rock song with Billy Corgan saying, it ain't right, over and over. Looked over the lyrics, and I'm having a really hard time trying to understand how this song ties into the whole space opera that Billy said the album was about. But maybe I'm just part of the unwashed masses that doesn't understand Billy's highbrow wordsmithing. Up next, we get to track 4, Moss. Like, okay, this is a legitimately good song. Like, I am not joking around. The song opens up with an interesting drum pattern. Billy has some slapback echo effect on his vocals, which really helps blend it into the mix so much better. It almost sounds like something that could have been on an Adore B-side, which is not an insult at all. Almost lives in the same world as the end is the beginning is the end. I would say besides Beguiled, this is the best song on the album by far. Unfortunately, it doesn't maintain that stride, because then we get to track 5, Nightwaves, and now we've moved on to generic synth pop. The song is comprised completely of electronic instruments, and back in the day, I would love when Billy would experiment with electronic-based aspects, but that was back when he had like a much more direct songwriting approach. Now he's just all over the place with no seeming direction. Like back in the day, he would have like, you know, this is the riff of the song. It's just going to stay this way, and it's not going to go all over the place, and it's going to be very clear. This is my vocal melody for the verse. It's very defined. This is my vocal melody for the chorus. It's very defined. These lyrics are actually about feelings and emotion, but I'll get more on that later. Track 6, Space Age, literally boring synth stuff. That's all I have to say about that track. Next, we get to track number 7, Every Morning. Now, what would be a very vocally vulnerable song, because all you really have is this synth, this light synth in the background, and Billy's singing. Since Billy is singing about some concept that nobody understands, his emotion comes off as fake or plastic. And now that I think about it, that goes for every single song on this ATUM album. Every volume of ATUM so far has come off that way. I have no belief in what he's saying, because he's basically just reading lyrics from some story he came up with that nobody else understands. When he sang, "Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage," you felt that emotion. When Billy sang the lyrics in Mayonnaise, you completely felt that emotion and it touched your heart. This song, these albums are completely plastic facsimiles of what used to be the Smashing Pumpkins. When did Billy become so afraid of being vulnerable and writing music from the heart? Like, why did he decide to cloak himself in all of this science fiction bullshit instead of just singing about his real life experiences? Is he not angsty enough anymore? Does he not have problems anymore that he can pull from? I don't know. It's really frustrating. Track 8, "To the Grays," boring synth pop. Track 9, "Beguiled." So after like 4 songs of boring synth pop, they finally give us another track worth listening to, "Beguiled." I've already done a video on this song where I reviewed it before the ATUM album came out. The song that for some reason they handpicked as their lead single for all 3 of these albums, and again, to my knowledge, the first volume did not have a single, even though Beyond the Veil was clearly meant to be the single for that album. I just thought it was weird that it, like, when they premiered this song and music video, you would think that Volume 1 is where Beguiled would be on, the album that it would be on. But no, it wasn't on Volume 1, it wasn't on Volume 3, it was on Volume 2, which seems very specific, which again makes me think that Beguiled is probably what they believe to be the most marketable song out of all 3 of the volumes. And if that's the case, I'm not very excited about that. With that being said, Moss was a really killer song as well. Let's see if the last 2 songs end with a boom. Track 10, "The Culling." Boring synth stuff with a little bit of David Gilmour-esque guitar towards the middle. The song tries to be epic towards the end, but fails and falls short. And then the last song, "Springtimes," got some dandy synthesizer work, incoherent lyrics by Billy Corgan, and a melody that meanders and will never get stuck in my head with its lack of any kind of hook, which I could say for both of these volumes, and Sear, in fact, and Shiny and Oh So Bright, or whatever that album was called. And with this song, though, you can tell it's got a darker motif, but fuck if I know what it is. Some morose acoustic work at the end, and the album just kind of fades out. And that is Volume 2 of ATUM. It has pretty much the same amount of listenable songs as Volume 1, because I believe Volume 1 had Beyond the Veil, and I think there was another song on there that I didn't mind. This one has Moss and Beguiled. Like, those are literally the only 2 good songs on this entire album. It's Billy in his weird science fiction, I'm going to write a rock opera phase, I guess. I don't know. But I honestly don't think he has the ability after... and I know people praise Oceania or whatever, but for me it was Zeitgeist as the last great album. I feel like after Zeitgeist, it's like that was all of his juice. He went like 7 albums or 7 years between Pumpkins albums, between Machina and Zeitgeist, and he had time to build up all these songs. And he blew his wad on Zeitgeist, and then after that, it was just, I'm going to release whatever I write. And we've seen him do that before. That biography they did, I forget the name of it, the DVD or whatever. He basically would write a song in his hotel room that morning and then play it that night to a very bemused audience. And the song was obviously unfinished, and nobody seemed to like it. There was a scene in the movie where they're doing their residency at the Fillmore in San Diego, I want to say, and it was all like B-side songs. And when I say B-side, I don't mean like the good B-sides like I mean songs like Gossamer and just songs that weren't well loved or super well known by the fans. And people started walking out, and Billy acted all surprised and like discouraged. And it's like, dude, you're just never gonna get it. Like, I mean, I know he's a smart guy. I know he gets that people want the hits, And and he's still an artist, so he does want to express himself without having to be a slave to the 90s. I get all that. But it's really one of those, you got to give one to them and one for yourself kind of things. Like, it's your fault that you established the sound that people love, okay? So getting mad at people for wanting to hear your old songs that were great, that's how you wrote at that time and was genuine to you at the time, like, you can't get mad at that. That was all on you. And you established that sound for a decade, and you can't be mad when people want something that you have established for 10 years and then you're giving them something else. So, crazy thing to think about is the new version of the Pumpkins has been around longer than the old version. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm done blathering about Billy Corgan and his disappointing songwriting these days. Anyway, what did you think about Volume 2 of ATUM? That's how you have to say it, by the way, because that's how Billy says it. I'm not looking forward to Volume 3 unless that's the rock one. I think he said something about, like, they're going to be kind of divided up. Like, one's going to be more synthy, one's going to be a hybrid, and one's going to be more rock. If that's the case, we'll see. I don't think they're ever going to get the mixing down. I think Billy loves the sound of his own voice these days because it's so high in the mix. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought, and let me know if you thought the track Moss rocked as much as I did. Till next time, have a good rest of your night.